He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora and a very warm welcome to the Kākāpō Files from RNZ. Ko Alison Ballance tēnei. Kākāpō Files is all about a very charismatic and a rather rare, giant, flightless parrot. The night parrot is found only in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and to be more precise is now found only on 3 breeding islands and 1 non-breeding island in the far south of the country. Before we humans and our camp followers arrived here just a few hundred years ago, Kākāpō were one of the most common birds. Then by 30 years ago, they were one of the rarest. Now, the amazing folk at the Kākāpō Recovery Programme have turned the birds' fortunes around. There are 236 Kākāpō in existence today. And by the end of this breeding season, we're all hoping to pass 300 birds. But the usual words of warning apply. We can't count our Kākāpō chicks until they fledge. And that's a few months away yet. And to be sure, we don't actually have any chicks yet. But mid-January is nearly upon us. This is episode 5, and we have the first nest, which is excellent news. To bring us up to date with the very latest Kākāpō breeding news, I've got science advisor Andrew Digby from the Kākāpō Recovery Programme on the line from Whenua Hou, Codfish Island. Kia ora, Andrew.
Kia ora, Alison.
Where are you today?
I'm at the hut on Whenua Hou, and I'm in a little porta cabin which has got some incubators in it for eggs. So this is our incubation room, and this hopefully in a few days' time we'll have some Kākāpō eggs in it, maybe even today.
Now, speaking of eggs, I understand we do have the first eggs of the season, so that's Pearl.
Yes, our team found Pearl's nest a few days ago and had a couple of eggs in it. And they're going to go up there again today to find out whether there are any more eggs.
So you're expecting maybe 3?
Yeah, that's typical. It does really vary with the female and with the season. But yep, 3 would be our expectation. It might be 2, it might be 4, but probably 3.
So how are you going to be able to tell if they're fertile?
Today, we're going to try and do a daytime candling of the eggs. And what that means is that we shine a torch through the egg to see whether there's any development. And so if there's development, you can start to see the embryo developing. You can see some blood vessels in the yolk of the egg.
And are you going to leave her with 3 eggs if she does have 3 eggs?
No, we'll try to leave her with 2 eggs. That's the plan. And on Whenua Hou this year, as on previous years, we're actually going to take the fertile eggs away because we're worried about damage in the nest from Kākāpō fighting with petrels, which sometimes share the same cavities. And so what we will do is we either will normally leave a dummy egg, or we'll leave in fertile eggs in the nest. And we'll leave her with a couple, and we'll bring one of the eggs back here, hopefully a fertile one.
But you're not 100% convinced that she will have fertile eggs this time?
She's only mated once, so that increases the chances that she will have an infertile clutch. And, there's around about a 50% chance. So, yeah, we'll cross our fingers, but we won't be surprised if it is an infertile clutch.
But anyway, it's tremendously exciting news that you finally got some eggs up on the fridge door. Can you tell us about the fridge door?
Yeah, the fridge door is evolved into a bit of a thing, really. It's just our way that we've always had on the islands of just tracking what's going on in the nests. So we have on the actual fridge, the human food fridge in our hut, we have a table basically with a row for each female. And when she nests, we mark next to that female's name whether she has eggs. And then when the chicks hatch, we mark that. If the chicks die or the eggs die or the eggs are infertile, we mark that too. Yeah, so it's just a way that we have of keeping track. And we're actually making a digital version of the fridge as well, so that's something that we can look at online too.
I've always liked the fridge door. I've always described it as the most widely consulted database on the island, and I like the way that the little eggs with the smiley faces, which are the fertile eggs, sprout a face and wings and legs when they hatch.
One of the problems that we have is that now we're having so many females who are possible breeders is that we're running out of room on our fridge, and so yeah, we're having to write a bit smaller to fit them all on.
That's hilarious. Now, hopefully any day soon something will happen with Esperance, who is the second female to mate. Have you got any news about her?
no, we haven't had any nesting information from her. We should soon see her activity start to drop on our remote monitoring systems. That could happen any day now, which would be a sign that she's nesting, and in which case we'll then go and find the nest. She hasn't mated again, but we did do some artificial insemination with her a few days ago.
Now, mating news, what else is there? So we know about Pearl, we know about Esperance. What else has there been?
So a few days ago, we had another mating on Whenua Hou. We had Hondy and Huhū, are both 2019 offspring. They're quite young, obviously, and they are actually half siblings. They share a father in Kākāpō. So that's not an ideal mating. They have a very low, what we call a mate suitability index. So they're quite related. So that's one mating on Whenua Hou. Then we had a mating on Anchor. So Anchor's kicked off, which is great, with Henry and Hine Taumai. Henry's a 2016 chick, Hine Taumai's in 2002. And then just last night, just hot off the press, we had Bluster Murphy and Heather on Whenua Hou.
Oh, great. So that's 5 in total. So we're underway.
Yeah, we are. We've had 4 matings on Whenua Hou and 1 mating on Anchor. And it's kicked off. It's a little bit of a slower start than we might have originally expected, but things should be quite steady now for the coming couple of weeks.
So the last 2 breeding seasons sort of kicked off on a real rush. Not so much this year. What's happening with the timing, do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. 2019 and 2022 were exceptions rather than the rule, I think. 2019 was particularly early, particularly on Anchor. On Anchor, we had a very, very fast flurry of matings happen all in really quick succession within a 2-week period, really early, around about Christmas time. And then 2022 was also quite early, a bit spread out. But they were the exceptions. And in previous years, it's been quite a bit later. And so this year, I think, is a bit more on par with those previous breeding seasons. We had thought it might be early, and we've got a couple of ways that we predict when the matings might occur. Traditionally, we've used spring temperatures. So normally we've found that the warmer the spring, the earlier the matings. But we've also got another method that we're just trialing. We're looking at the rimu abundance. So from the previous autumn. So if there's lots of rimu fruit, it tends to be an earlier breeding season. And so because we had such a large amount of rimu fruit this year, we thought it really might be quite early, on a par with 2019 and 2022, maybe with matings, around about Christmas time. But that didn't transpire. It's just a little bit later than that. And we've had an unusual spring down in the south of New Zealand. We've had, for example, quite a very cold September, October, and then quite a warm November. It's been quite mixed. And I think those unusual climatic conditions might have affected the Kākāpō and the development of the rimu fruit a little bit, which is why it's actually become a little bit later. But it's always so hard to make predictions with Kākāpō because when we make these predictions, we're using a very small data set. Kākāpō do not breed very often. So, we're predicting these matings timings on just like something like 9 breeding seasons, which is really not very many. So you always have to take predictions about Kākāpō with a grain of salt, and they always surprise us. But it's not a late breeding season this year. It's kind of probably a little bit on the early side compared to average, and it just might be a little bit more spread out.
Listener Rebecca wrote in asking for more information about artificial insemination, or AI, which is not to be confused with the AI that is artificial intelligence. Rebecca wonders how long AI has been used with Kākāpō for. Have any males been born? Have these males bred successfully? Artificial insemination is something that technical advisor Daryl Eason from the Kākāpō team has been working on since the early 2000s. In theory, it's a very straightforward process. Collect a semen sample from a male and then deliver that sperm into a female Kākāpō's cloaca as soon as possible. It's done 3 to 5 days after a female has mated naturally. This is when she's in her fertile period and still storing sperm, which she does for a few days before her eggs are finally fertilised and then laid. Here's Daryl with more details about why AI is a useful technique.
Kākāpō only mate 1 to 3 times before they lay their eggs. So with most other bird species that pair up, they are mating multiple times in a day. So fertility is usually very high. Kākāpō just do it 1 to 3 times, and we learnt if that it's only 1 time, then the fertility rate is just under 50%. It's pretty low. But if they mate a couple of times with the same male, the fertility rate increases and it's about 70%. But if they mate with 2 different males, which quite often happens, the fertility is about over 90%. So we thought, well, can we encourage them to mate with multiple males? It's not very easy, but we can potentially replicate that if we do artificial insemination. So we've got two reasons for artificial insemination, is that if a female mates just the one time, we can improve the chances of her having fertile eggs if we follow up with an artificial insemination from sperm from another male. Or if a female, say, mated with her brother or other close relative, we can try and prevent further inbreeding by following up with artificial insemination with a more appropriate mate. So while the population is still small and manageable, we can try and improve the overall genetic quality of what is produced for the future.
So it's taken a while to get the artificial insemination working well, but you seem to have nailed it now.
I think I've nailed it now. It's taken a very long time and a lot of help from other people. We've been working on that probably since 2002. It's been going a long time, and we've had some wonderful help from really interesting and experienced people from around the world. We've had Juan Blanco from Spain, who works with eagles and other raptors. We've had Sushil Sood from India, who works with pheasants and emus. And we've had Michael Lears from Germany, who works with parrots. And so each of them have given me good clues on what to do and really work out the techniques that are necessary for Kākāpō, because it's not all the same with each bird. And it's actually, if all goes well, it's a very quick technique.
Thanks, Daryl. The first 3 chicks to be successfully produced through AI hatched and fledged in 2009. And there's a very familiar name involved. The mother of 2 of those chicks is none other than early bird Pearl. She was inseminated with sperm from Stumpy. Stumpy is a genetically valuable bird who is the only offspring of 2 Rakiora Stewart Island birds that died some time ago, John Girl and Pegasus. Pearl and Stumpy's chicks were the female Gemma and the male Wanma. The 3rd successful AI chick in 2009 was the female Ra, whose parents are Solstice and Smoko, now deceased. Sadly, these first 3 AI successes all died in 2022, but there's no pattern to their deaths that I can see, and nothing you could blame as a consequence of being conceived through AI. They had all successfully bred. Gemma produced 1 chick before she unfortunately died from the fungal disease aspergillosis. Wanma was found dead after fathering 2 chicks, his cause of death unknown. And Ra produced 5 chicks before she died in an accident. She fell from a tall rimu tree and was found with her crop full of fruit that she was collecting to feed her chicks. A decade passed before the next successful AI. In 2019, Nora, matriarch of the Wynn dynasty, produced the male Rahotu with sperm from the Fiordland dynasty's Sinbad. The male chick, known as Margaret Marie 2B19 to use his chick ID, he did fledge successfully, but he died from aspergillosis before he was given a proper name. His mum was Margaret Marie, and his dad was Stumpy, again. By 2022, Daryl and the Kākāpō sperm team had developed their skills to perfection, and there was a veritable AI baby boom. 8 AI Kākāpō successfully fledged. 4 males, Andy, Kevin, Liers and Sushil, and 4 females, Kaiako, Madeline, Tangiwai and Turuapo. Madeline was euthanised in 2024 because she had an untreatable bill injury. The surviving AI babies are almost certainly too young to breed this year, so we won't know how successful they might be until a future breeding season. Now let's go back to Science Advisor Andrew Digby. He's out on Whenua Hou as part of this year's AI efforts. So what's the sperm team been up to, Andrew?
Yeah, so we've been waiting to kick off the artificial insemination for the breeding season. And so artificial insemination is something that we do to prevent the loss of genetic diversity as much as we can. Our primary aim is to make sure that some of those founder males, or those older males who have had very few or even no offspring, get some representation. So they're our focus. We also try to use AI to override any other unsuitable mating. So, for example, Hondy and Huhū, who have just mated recently on Whenua Hou, who are half siblings, they have a very high relatedness. And we use something called a mate suitability index to quantify that. It's basically a score between 1 and 7 of how related a pair of birds are. We have that score for every male-female combination. And the best score is a 1, and the worst score is a 7 when the birds are really closely related. And Hondy and Huhū have a score of 7. So we'd like to try and use artificial insemination to override that mating, to try and sort of outweigh any negative effects that might happen from having two closely related individuals mating like that. Things like maybe this might much more likely that the clutch is going to be infertile. So that's the reason why. We also suspect that fertility might be increased by artificial insemination, although we don't have any significant proof of that yet, but we might do by the end of this breeding season. It's just a numbers game for that one. And we're kicking that off this year. We kicked it off with Esperance, who mated with Ian, and we artificially inseminated her with sperm from Ralph and Hoodie. Now, Esperance and Ian had a relatedness score of 6, so that was really quite low. So that's one of the reasons that we did an artificial insemination for Esperance. And also Ralph has not got any offspring too, so we wanted to try and make sure that he had some representation into the future. So we're hoping that one works. And the procedure all went well, so we're crossing our fingers that she has a fertile clutch and the offspring might be Ralph's.
Well, that would be exciting. Do you have a male or males in mind for Huhū?
Yes, we do. We're going today, hopefully, for Faulkner and also with Boss and Stumpy as backups. So sometimes we'll just inseminate with one male, depending on what sort of sample we get from that male, but often we'll inseminate with 2, and we suspect that there might be some sperm competition going on, so it might actually increase the chance of a fertile clutch if we inseminate with a couple of males. But sometimes if we really, really want offspring from just one male, we'll just use the one sample.
Of course, it depends whether you can actually catch the male you want to collect sperm from.
That's right. And if we can catch the female too. So that's always the biggest challenge of artificial insemination. And one of the problems is doing it in the field is that the male and female, are hard to catch. You might be able to catch the male and not the female. She'd be up a tree or vice versa. And sometimes they're also quite a long way apart. So you have to transport the sperm quite a long way. And it's just the difficulties of doing things in the field where it might be raining, like it is today, for example, or it might be really, really windy like it was yesterday. And it makes conditions really difficult when you're dealing with sperm samples and pipettes and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge doing it in the field. And that's one of the reasons why it's taken quite a long time for our team, with the help of a lot of experts from around the world, to get this right. But we think we've got a recipe now which works pretty well. And yeah, we'll find out more as we go on for this season, how successful it is.
I have a question from a listener who wonders whether there might be any unintended consequences of artificial insemination. For instance, if you're collecting sperm from males who are not very successful at mating naturally, is there a risk that you're creating a generation of male birds who just aren't very good?
That is a really good question. It's something which has been on our mind. You know, there might be a good reason why the females are not mating with some of these males. Some of these males who have been booming and displaying for years, sometimes even decades, and the females have not mated with them. And sometimes we'll see from our tracking data that the females will visit them, but not mate with them and go on to mate with other individuals. So that is a real possibility. It might just be those males are less fit, and there's a very good reason why the females don't mate with them. On the other hand, we have had a really strong skew in Kākāpō reproduction, in that some males will absolutely dominate and will end up with lots and lots of offspring from just a few individual males. And that's not a good thing for the future of Kākāpō too. We have to kind of weigh up those two things and take into account that sometimes, you know, what the situation we've had with Kākāpō has not been a natural situation. We've maybe had a low density of males compared to what was naturally occurring in the past. So yeah, we're trying to kind of compensate for those things, and to just try to make sure that some of those males do have offspring into the future. It won't be a large number if we do. So, for example, Ralph, if we are successful this year, maybe he'll have 1 chick or 2 chicks which might survive. It's not a big number, but it just means that we have that genetic diversity going forward into the future. But it's definitely a really good point, and that's something that we might be able to look at in future with our genomic data that we have to see what effect there might be between those males which really don't have many matings and their genetic viability or quality.
Lovely to talk with you. Great to hear all the news, and good luck with the artificial insemination today.
Great. Thanks, Alison. And hopefully we'll have more matings to report next time we speak.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll be back in a week with more news from the 2026 Kākāpō breeding season. The Kākāpō Files is produced in collaboration with the New Zealand Department of Conservation's Kākāpō Recovery Programme. A special thanks this week to Science Advisor Andrew Digby and Technical Advisor Daryl Eason for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk with us. This episode was produced by me, Alison Ballance, with help from RNZ's Claire Concannon and Brianna Uritich-Gregg. The sound engineer was Phil Benge. Email us your questions to kākāpō@rnz.co.nz. You can find the Kākāpō Files online at rnz.co.nz or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, please rate and review us so that other bird nerds can find us. I'll catch you next week, but for now, thanks for listening. Mā te wā.